Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. I know cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp on Tumblr, SoundCloud, Google+, timeforhemp.com, and, of course, iHeartRadio. It is Wednesday, and on Wednesday, we like to celebrate all the amazing people at LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP.cc. I would encourage you to go to their website and check them out. And my joint host on Wednesdays is Judge Lenny Frieling. Good morning, Judge.
My friend Casper, how are you?
I am in a mellow mood living here in Portland, Oregon, where we have recreational marijuana available. And the governor just said last night, she just signed the bill yesterday. I hate to give a date of things happening because it kind of makes this segment a little dated, but the governor signed a bill last night here in Oregon that makes it possible for medical marijuana dispensaries to begin selling recreational marijuana in their medical marijuana dispensaries today.
That's fantastic news.
So you can now,
it's great.
Yeah, you can now walk into a medical marijuana dispensary, and if without your medical marijuana card, if you just have a hankering to enjoy recreational use, you can park your car, walk inside, look at the different open jars up on the counter, pick a flavor that you like, buy a half ounce, pay for it with your ATM card, put it into a nice bag that's all beautiful with the name on the outside of the bag. Walk out to your car, get into your car, and drive home and smoke it. And the only problem you're going to have is the munchies.
That's funny.
You know, Casper, I have to wonder. I think the reality is we really cannot draw a line between where recreational ends and where medical begins. If I imbibe and I am happier, well, am I high or am I undepressed, less depressed? Is it battling depression or just making me happy? Well, both sound fine to me, but I just don't know how we can draw a line, so congratulations.
Yeah, it is exciting, and we've worked really hard to make it happen. And I'm going to hush my mouth and enjoy that benefit right now while you and our joint family member, who is also our joint guest, have a joint chat here at Time for Hemp.
Smoking. This morning we have Diane Goldstein, a famous person in her own right, an outstanding LEAP member, LEAP speaker. And I'm going to ask Diane if she would please welcome. And Diane, could you give us a bit of your general background, where you came from as far as law enforcement? And the next question, of course, will be, how did you end up from there with LEAP?
Hey, Lenny and Casper, thank you guys both for having me on board. Like always, it's one of my favorite podcasts to do. And so I'll do the very, very brief. I spent almost 22 years in law enforcement, retiring as a lieutenant for Redondo Beach Police Department in California. And I came to LEAP during the Proposition 19 campaign after watching a debate between Judge Jim Gray and a now retired police chief in Orange County where I live, where I went up and introduced myself to Jim. Since I knew who he was based on a lot of his work that he'd done in drug policy reform in Orange County. And Jim happened to pass my information on to Neil Franklin, our executive director, who happened to be in town, and I met with him and I was recruited in. So it was a fluke that I got to Leap. And I started off with Leap not really thinking about any other drug other than marijuana, and quickly realized that it wasn't just about marijuana prohibition or the war on marijuana, that it was about the total drug war and its failure as a whole. So that's kind of the quick down and dirty of where I'm at.
Diane, let me ask you a question. In your 20, almost 30 years in uniform, on the job, may I assume that some of the people busted by you and busted by people under your command were drug dealers?
No, absolutely. And so I'm going to clarify, it's 22 years.
22.
So, yeah, not it's not almost 30. There's a big 8-year gap there, Lenny.
I hear you loud and clear. At 39 years, it seems to be.
Yeah. So I spent a couple years working both our gang unit, and then I supervised our special investigations unit, which primary focus was in fact narcotics, but we did a lot of career criminal type of surveillance and joint terrorism task force type of surveillance work post 9/11. So yeah, I had lots and lots of contacts with people who were, drug users, drug abusers, and drug sellers.
If your people arrested somebody that had murdered their wife, put them in prison, would somebody step up to murder their wife again?
Well, no, not in the same sense. I mean, I don't think I don't think we create a vacuum of leadership in domestic violence, because that is such a personal, intimate, violent crime, like we do with drug sellers or the drug war in general.
You know where I'm going with this.
I do.
Where I'm going with this is, let's say you arrest a street corner dealer. You have now put that street corner dealer out of a job. Is that position going to remain vacant?
Oh, absolutely not. It's called, whether we want to call it drug lord whack-a-mole, drug war whack-a-mole, or local street dealer whack-a-mole, is what we know is very much different than any other pattern of criminality, is that literally by taking someone off the street, all we do is create a leadership vacuum for a particular area of the drug market. And so, let's just take a look at Mexico. Is we help cause all the devastation and the deaths in Mexico. In our attempt to remove kingpins, is we created the infighting and the violence as other people tried to grab that market share because of the profitability margin of drugs.
So when we take out a drug kingpin, a serious big shot, do you mean to say that job is filled, somebody else takes their spot, and we accomplish nothing?
Absolutely. And in fact, there's been intelligence reports that have come out of the Bureau of Homeland Security, both by, Customs Enforcement and other organizations, that have basically acknowledged that, removing kingpins does virtually nothing other than maybe slow down the progression of drugs into our country for a short bit of time.
So if people think of it as a corporate downsizing model, that doesn't fit.
No, it doesn't, because there's no corporate downsizing. It's just a new corporate entity that's going to come in, and they're going to capture that market share which is there.
So prohibition is self-perpetuating, and literally by the very model can never work and never end. That sound right?
Absolutely. It's a vicious circle. Different than, let's talk about things like domestic violence, or let's talk about, driving under the influence, or property crime or violent crime. We know that patterns of criminality are much different around everything else. We have made a tremendous impact on driving under the influence of alcohol with a combination of different things. Enforcement is public service announcements, public education. And so we've done a very good job in the last 20 years of reducing the traffic fatality rate, not just in California, but across our country. And so we need to separate out, drug possession, drug use from irresponsible drug use. It's no different than caffeine or alcohol or, having a prescription drug. We can use things responsibly. We need to deal with the issue once people use them in an irresponsible fashion and criminalize or hurt someone, not simply just for possession.
So while we're advocating legalization, regulation, taxation of basically all the drugs that are out there, we're not advocating that you do that and then run your table saw, are we?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely correct. We need to really start looking at the science, and we need to decipher that. According to Dr. Carl Hart, who's one of the most notable neuroscientists who's done the drug research on human beings, not just on rats, is he basically states, and has the research to prove it, that 80 to 90% of all illicit substance use in America is non-problematic. And so what we know, just like career criminals, is you have 10 to 20% of drug users that are causing the main issues in our society because they're going out and criminalizing. They're, breaking into cars, breaking into people's homes, robbing people in order to sustain their public health issue, which is a drug addiction. And so if we treated all drugs from a medical perspective without coercive drug treatment, okay, and I'm separating out cannabis, okay, I'm talking hard drugs at this point, okay, is if we separated out those drugs and provided an appropriate public health response that was non-coercive, that didn't threaten to send people to jail, we would do more for our crime rate than saturating our communities with thousands of police officers in order to prevent crime.
Is LEAP in any way saying that the more scary, the scarier of the drugs, heroin, meth, crack, whatever, is LEAP taking the position that these are harmless or safe?
LEAP is taking the position that all drugs have potential harm and abuse, but that it's the criminalization of the drugs and the drug user itself that is causing more problems in our society. So, for example, as clearly we can see with the heroin issue. Let's just simply break that down. Americans are prescribed, I think, something like 2 million prescriptions of any type of opioid in 2013. And what we've seen as the consequence of that overprescription of all opioids is there was a crackdown by the DEA through a variety of different supply side efforts, pill mills, pharmacy database systems to try to identify people that are abusing drugs, whether it's doctors or patients, is with this crackdown, what they did is they moved the legal market from prescriptions that was being handled by doctors and pharmacists into the illicit market. And so doctors are now afraid to actually prescribe pain medication to chronic pain patients. Chronic pain patients basically have then gone into the street to try to obtain OxyContin. OxyContin is currently selling on the street for between $50 to $60 for one pill. A patient can get illicit heroin that is controlled by criminals and cartels for a nickel or a dime bag that is between 60 to 80% pure and is cut with things like fentanyl or other substances that have contributed to the massive overdose deaths that we're experiencing in our country right now.
Is it fair to say that using street-bought heroin carries with it a random, arbitrary death penalty?
Absolutely, it can. Absolutely. Because you don't know who is manufacturing, processing the drug. And so as a comparison, let's take a look at countries outside of the United States that have heroin-assisted treatment programs. And that's right, heroin that is considered a Schedule I substance in other countries, chronic substance abuse abusers can go and be treated as a medical issue between them and their doctor. And consequently, positive outcomes that have occurred have been the reduction of death in overdose, the reduction of disease, lower HIV, hepatitis C, epidemics, unlike the United States right now in Indiana and Miami and other places. And consequently, what they've also seen in Switzerland in particular, they saw a huge reduction in property crime because chronic heroin addicts were no longer going out into the community and criminalizing the community in order to obtain money to buy their heroin.
So, for example, we have burglaries committed, we have drive-by shootings being committed that but for the illegality of these substances simply wouldn't happen. Fair
Correct.
Statement?
That is absolutely correct. And what I'd like to say is, this isn't something new that we're inventing. So back in the 1920s and 30s, there was a police chief by the name of August Vollmer. August Vollmer is the police chief that professionalized law enforcement, not just in California, but across the country. He was Berkeley Police Department chief. He was one of the presidents of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Vollmer introduced things such as forensics, fingerprints, traffic cars, crime beats. He demanded that his police officers be college educated. And one of the things that Vollmer said back in the 30s was that law enforcement should not be involved in the investigation of any moralistic crime, and in particular relative to the issues of substance use and abuse, is he said that it was not law enforcement's role to criminalize a public health issue, and what he proposed back then was to provide drug addicts with their drugs at government cost as a way to enhance public safety.
My rough estimate is this. My understanding is that the same places that we can grow coffee can grow cocaine. With cocaine, 2 harvests a year. With coffee, 1 harvest a year. My thinking is cocaine should basically cost about the same as coffee. Has anyone ever heard of somebody's house being broken into so someone else could buy their coffee?
No, and the issue is because the market is controlled and regulated. And so I think that's the biggest problem with drug prohibition is we've abdicated control of a dangerous substance to people who are not concerned with the safety of our communities and our children.
Let's switch, and we all know I couldn't agree more either. Let's switch over a bit. On the government side of this, we have a Drug Enforcement Administration, which we call the DEA. The DEA, of course, is run by people with substantial expertise in the field. That sound right?
You would think so.
Talk to me.
Well, let's go back and let's take a look at the evolution of the head of the DEAs in the last couple of years. I think everybody clearly knows that Michelle Leonhart was forced to resign based on the corruption and her lack of working with drug policy reformers and criminal justice reformers, and her intransigence in saying things that are unscientific in nature. So her big issue was always is marijuana is just as dangerous as heroin, as LSD, as any other drug. And it's laughable because we know the science has completely disproved it. Currently, we have an acting DEA chief who's a little bit better because yesterday he admitted that marijuana is less dangerous than heroin, but he described it as the comparison with, I would rather get into a car accident going 30 miles an hour than in a car accident going 60 miles an hour. It's still dangerous. It's just a little bit less dangerous. And then he made the statement, but I'm not an expert. And so
who is not an expert?
The acting DEA chief.
The chief of our National Drug Enforcement Administration said, I am not an expert.
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I heard that right.
Yeah. And as I sat there and kind of went, wow, you're not an expert? How we're paying you 6 figures to be an expert, and for you not to be fully aware of the science behind this issue. There are so many other ways to couch, to discuss it, to from a law enforcement perspective, to be able to say, look, all drugs can be problematic. We need to use science to design our drug policies. Yes, marijuana is in fact less dangerous than alcohol, than heroin, than other drugs, yet we want to be able to keep it out of the hands of those who are most at risk, which is our children. Well, so he said pot probably not as bad as heroin. So it's people are giving him a lot of credit. I think we shouldn't be giving him any credit. We should be ridiculing him just as much as we did Leonhardt.
Well, speaking of credit, that's one thing we don't get a lot of here at Time for Hemp Broadcasting Network, so we've got to pay our bills with cash. And the only way to make cash is to go to a commercial break, and then we're going to listen to a song about how fantastic cannabis is, and then we're going to come back and pick up where we left off here at Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Get your smoke on, everybody gather round. My connection came to town. He's got chronic, don't you know? He came straight from Mexico. Buy an eighth or buy an ounce, but here comes the 5-0, so you better bounce. Get your smoke on, get your smoke on. Light up a
Yeah, get your smoke on. That's what we do here at Time for Hemp. And we encourage you to get your smoke on and to come out of the closet and let everybody know that you do. You know, that's how we're going to win this. As long as you're hiding in the closet, terrified that you're going to be put on some list, just horrified that your boss is going to see you at a rally or on camera being verbally outspoken about your rights to have medical marijuana, as long as you're just afraid that your family and friends are going to either kick you out of the house or no longer talk to you because you use the weed. Seriously? You know, first of all, you're leaving the rest of us out here hanging. And secondly, you're hiding something that you really just can't hide. And as long as you're living a lie, geez, people, how can you have an honest relationship with the world around you, let alone yourself? Well, I could go on and on forever, but you can pick up a Dear Abby column about lying to the world and learn more about it than what I can say today. So I'm going to enjoy my joint here in our joint conversation with my joint friends. How we doing, y'all?
Fantastic. Sitting out in beautiful Colorado, mountain high glory in the free state of Colorado.
Well, I got news for you, Diane. You there too?
You know what? I'm doing really good.
Well,
and so I want you to know that I'm not in Portland yet, but we're still looking for houses up there. So I'm hoping within the next year or so that we'll be, you know, up there much more so than we are now.
Well, I got news for you. I am so excited about the presidential campaign race that's heating up for the election that happens in 2 years or 3 years, or I got to look it up. I don't know.
2016.
Thank you. But here is a heads up from the man who says he's going to win the White House. And what he does is going to be changes. Residents in the United States that have legalized marijuana should toke up while they still can. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has said, if you're getting high in Colorado today, enjoy it. Christie, a Republican campaigning for the 2016 presidential nomination, said Tuesday during a town hall meeting at the Salt Hall Pub in Newport, New Hampshire. As of January 2017, I will enforce the federal laws. Well, what do you think about that, y'all? You think, I can't even believe he's even considering himself a candidate, and that's almost like saying I'm running for president. Please don't vote for me.
Casper, people wonder, does one vote make a difference? I happen to have graduated from Livingston High School, where Christie seems to base a lot of his effort. And I was there some years before him, and I have to tell you, stupendously good high school. I'm a little embarrassed by having him as a classmate, as a graduation. How would I say, he didn't graduate in the same year, but I can't believe he made it through school. And I really hope the Republicans do run him, because the Democrats then win. I'd love to see Palin run as VP again. Casper, I have a question for you. You have unbelievable expertise, including expertise on pot songs. With all of the marijuana music you have heard, been exposed to, do any of them say, don't smoke pot, it'll kill you, man?
Well, no. In fact, many of them are songs that have in their lyrics the benefits of medicinal use, or they'll talk about in their lyrics the express cost of running a war on drugs like this and how it's destroying our society. And so, no, not at all. I mean, they have a variety of other facts in their lyrics at times, all of which contradict that.
As my friend Toby would say, I'm just saying. Diane Goldstein, glad to have you back.
Thank you. You know, Chris Christie is, for me, it's like watching a train wreck waiting to happen. So I'll give you kind of like a sick little secret of mine. I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and I watch The Real Housewives of anything. And my favorite one has always been The Real Housewives of New Jersey. And I just think that Chris Christie is the exact same thing. He knows he's never going to win. He's polling at number 9 out of 16 candidates at this point. He's just up there, no different than Donald Trump trying to make a name for himself. And, I'm not worried about him in any way, shape, or form.
I left out the punchline of my Livingston High School, one vote matters. My cousin, beautiful young lady, my cousin lost senior class president to Chris Christie by one vote.
Oh, bummer.
If Chris Christie had not been his senior class president, one vote, would history be different? Would there have been a traffic jam that was intentionally caused? I suggest perhaps not. Yes, one vote matters.
Absolutely.
Diane, let's jump over to forfeiture. What is forfeiture? We hear the word a lot. What is it?
Well, I think that what we have to do is we have to really qualify the difference between criminal asset forfeiture, which is based on due process, and a criminal conviction, and civil asset forfeiture, which is what was created back in the 1980s as a way to attack drug kingpins. And so the architects of civil asset forfeiture created a system where law enforcement, federal, state, local, and district attorneys could seize the civil assets of suspected criminals in order to break up their organized crime rings. And what we've seen, instead of breaking up organized crime rings, civil asset forfeiture, which does not require any type of criminal conviction, and it kind of takes our judicial system, rule of law, and upends it. So, for example, in civil asset forfeiture, you could have $10,000 cash, and a narcotics dog comes and sniffs it, and law enforcement can't seize that money because it's comes from supposedly the drug trade. And that money is deemed guilty. And you, as the owner, the innocent owner of the property, have to work through either a state or a federal system in order to get your property back. And so in California, I've been working, LEAP has been working with Drug Policy Alliance, the ACLU, and the Institution of Justice, and Senator Holly Mitchell in working a asset forfeiture reform bill through our legislation, which would require all asset forfeiture in California would have to be criminal in nature, and it would not allow local law enforcement to adopt out to the federal government civil asset forfeiture in subversion of California law. And so we've got great legs. It made it out of Senate vote 38-1 with one Democrat opposing it and one member of the GOP abstaining. I just testified for the third time up in the Capitol on it in Assembly Public Safety. We made it out of there 6-0 vote. And so we're really working hard with a number of organizations and activists to educate our legislature on the damages of civil asset forfeiture and how it subverts American civil rights and the property rights of innocent owners.
So one of the things, and this is a bit of a switch in subject, one of the things that gets seized are cars used to transport marijuana, for example, illegally.
Correct.
And as part of that, what we are now seeing in Colorado is a lot of border enforcement, border towns with drug dog handler teams waiting at exits to do drug searches. These are the same people that tell us that drug dealers rent cars to avoid losing their cars to the civil forfeiture. what do we do about the poor slob that rents his car that was used by the previous renter to move 100 pounds of pot? So now we have an innocent person driving along in our beautiful state of Colorado, gets pulled over for 4 miles over the speed limit, and they bring on the drug dog. Drug dog goes nuts. How's that person's day going to end?
Well, and that's, I think, that the whole issue, and I think one of the things that we're starting to see, which is phenomenal, is that as marijuana has become legalized in whether it's for medical or for adult consumption, is we're starting to see the laws change relative to search and seizure, where now, I can't remember what state recently said that simply the smell of marijuana is no longer sufficient for probable cause based on the legality of the state law. And so things are starting to change, but the problem is, for example, in California here, is I've been testifying on this instance. I had a friend of mine who's an attorney who defended a gentleman who had $10,000 seized in a drug interdiction stop. He was a innocent food truck owner traveling from northern to southern California on Interstate 5. He got stopped by plainclothes detectives through Los Angeles County. He didn't think that having $10,000 cash in his car was a crime. So, they asked if they could do a search. He said yes. They found the cash. They brought a dope dog. Dope dog hit on the narcotics allegedly on the cash, and the agency took the cash. So my friend was hired through the county judicial system, to try to obtain the money back. They go to court. In California, for real property under $25,000 in cars and houses to be taken, it has to be a criminal conviction. So they got to court. This person wasn't charged nor convicted of a crime. The judge ordered that the money be returned, but the agency had already taken those dollars and had it adopted out by the federal government. And so this innocent owner didn't have the resources to continue to fight at the federal level to obtain his money back, and was too afraid to do so because the deputy sheriff basically threatened to send his information to the IRS because he was in a cash service business.
It occurs to me, normally, if a heavily armed person took my money, left, and intended to keep my money, as a criminal defense attorney, I'd look at that and say, well, it sounds like robbery.
Highway robbery.
Sounds like highway robbery to me.
Absolutely.
And as I understand it, when a state police agency turns forfeitures over to the feds, because the feds are very good at keeping stuff, that the kickback is 80% and the feds keep 20% for their courteous involvement.
Correct. And so the federal government is just simply acting as a pass-through agency in order to make money.
Let's talk about money. In Colorado, in the United States, we have a bit of a problem. We have a large and rapidly growing industry involving the movement of a lot of money. And because it is all in cash, it presents problems, whether it's theft, bad accounting, paying tax problems, on and on and on and on. Imagine modern life without a credit card.
Oh, yeah.
About impossible.
Yeah, and you know what? And again, if we start looking at, I'm always that half glass full person, is we are starting to make tremendous strides in drug banking laws or marijuana banking laws, in appropriations at the federal level, not just at the state. And so literally last week, the Senate Appropriations Committee voted to allow marijuana legalization to move forward. So that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. Oh no, it's to move forward in the nation's capital, but they also voted to allow banks to provide services to state legalized marijuana stores. So, it still needs to continue to move forward legislatively, but, this bill was a bipartisan bill. So it's a key Senate committee, and so we are making progress.
I can tell you why I not only believe, but I know the banking problem will be solved, and it will be solved sooner than we think. Is it fair to say that banks make money by having money in the bank?
Oh, no, absolutely.
So if there's all this cash that's not in the banks are not making money on that cash. Do any of us think their boards of directors are going to think that's okay?
No, and, but the banking issue is really interesting because I think it becomes one of these huge points of the nature of hypocrisy in the political system. Think about the billions of dollars that have been laundered by the banks, and that the federal government knew that the money was being laundered for cartels and said, the bank's too big to fail. We're just going to find them.
Sounds like Miami in the cocaine days, straight out of Scarface.
No, absolutely. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then on the flip side of that, because we were talking about asset forfeiture out of Florida, is they had a huge issue of corruption relative to asset forfeiture, where you had a small law enforcement agency who participated on a task force, a narcotics task force, and all they did is they traveled around the country in an undercover capacity and laundered money for cartels. What we now know is they laundered almost $70 million for the cartels. They turned over information to the federal government, who seized about $30 million and did in fact make some very small numbers of arrests. But over $40 million was actively laundered by undercover police officers in an effort to fund a local law enforcement agency.
One of the things that troubles me is the moral message that is given by another very, very, very common narcotics investigation technique. You arrest a little guy, you scare the bejesus out of him, little guy rolls on who? His big brother, his cousin, his best friend. What kind of a message is that? Roll on your closest people to save yourself?
Well, speaking of rolling, I have to roll on down the road and to do a new commercial break so that we can pay our bills and afford to buy rolls when we sit down to have dinner. So this is going to be a very short break, I promise, and we'll be coming back and finishing up this fantastic conversation here on Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
Yeah, stay alert with consciousness. That's all we ask. Seriously, I don't want you eating 3 or 4 Hershey bars and getting behind the steering wheel. Good golly, Miss Molly, you'll be taking a nap halfway through our ride. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that come with being responsible in what you do and taking care of the world around you so that we can avoid a nanny state. And I would encourage you to get involved and get active. And get a hold of a speaker at leap.cc and invite them to your neck of the woods to help enlighten minds about the need to end prohibition. Because as long as you're sitting there trying to figure out if America really does have talent and who's going to win it, or if Darren's going to divorce Samantha when he discovers that Tabitha's a witch, then you need to get out that front door and get a life and start helping people realize the truth about prohibition. With that said, I'm going to send this joint conversation back to my joint friends here in the Big Joint broadcast at Time for Hemp. Your Honor?
Thanks, boss. Diane, let's assume glass half full, 3/4 full. Let's assume we have now succeeded in convincing everybody listening to this broadcast that prohibition hasn't worked, cannot work, and will never work. All right, so now all of us know that. What do we do with that knowledge? How do we change things? What's going on?
You know what? I think that one of the things that we need to clearly do is become activists in our own right, is we need to not be apathetic. We need to be involved in the voting process at the local, state, and the federal level, and we need to educate ourselves. So there's a tremendous amount of resources that are out there for folks, whether it's Law Enforcement Against Prohibition or NORBL, Americans for Safe Access, whatever it happens to be.
Diane, you're involved, obviously, with LEAP, LEAP.cc, as a speaker. Does one have to be a former judge or former law enforcement, or for that matter, current judges and current law enforcement to be involved with LEAP, to be part of the solution?
No, absolutely. You don't. You can belong to LEAP as a civilian community supporter of ours, and in fact, LEAP right now is what we're really touting is, we're an international organization that has well over 150,000 community supporters. That also includes over 5,000 current, former, and retired criminal justice professionals. And so, it becomes one of those things that we are representing the voice of our constituents, because this is almost kind of, for me, like community policing, is we need your input to help in the drug war.
Am I being fair in referring to LEAP as an effective international organization?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There, we have branches in Costa Rica, South America, the United Kingdom, LEAP, Germany is kicking off. So we keep growing exponentially, and we have speakers and members, I think, in, something like 100 countries now.
Seems to me we figured large in educating Brazil also.
Oh, yeah, we have a huge, and it's very interesting, both the Brazilian branch and the Costa Rica branch are full of active duty criminal justice professionals, not just retired informers.
Let's talk about Caravan. What am I referring?
So the Caravan for Peace. So in 2012, LEAP led the Caravan for Peace, which was led by Javier Cecilia, the Mexican poet laureate, whose son was killed by cartel members and was 5 other of his friends. And so Javier put down his pen and has been the voice for the voiceless. 2012, Javier came up with 110 other victims of America's drug war down in south of the border, and we went on a cross-country bus journey that started in Tijuana all the way to Washington, D.C. We had a videographer, and Steve Downing, one of our other board members who used to do TV production shows, spent the last year and a half putting together a 31-minute documentary about our participation in the Caravan for Peace. We've done a soft launch, and to our LEAP list, I did a fundraiser for LEAP at my house on my birthday this last week, and we are getting ready to launch it as a major fundraiser.
How long will the project extend time-wise?
You know what is, we haven't released the link completely yet on our website. We're going to be doing a big press release, but people will be able to download the documentary. It's like $2.50 to rent it. It's $5 to own it, and you can purchase it in CD copy. What we're encouraging people who are LEAP supporters, if they want to do a fundraiser for LEAP, they can show it as a way to educate the public.
Let's go back to basics, the most basic. What is the LEAP platform? We take that for granted.
The LEAP platform, I think, is the linchpin to total criminal justice reform, because it's not just about drug policy. It's about law enforcement and criminal justice, judicial, prison reform as well. Is that by ending the drug war, that what we do is we create a better justice system that fairly and equitably treats all Americans in the same fashion.
You're not referring to treating people of color the same, are you?
I am, as a matter of fact.
That's not exactly what we're doing right now, is it?
Right.
I'm thinking in Colorado right now, I think we're under 10% black, and I believe the number of black and Latinos in prison in the state of Colorado is equal to the number of whites in prison in the state of Colorado, which of course nowhere reflects the population balance. I'm not sure which is more upsetting. That's as upsetting as it can get. At the same time, let's not forget, in Colorado, to keep a person in state prison, DOC, Department of Corrections, for 1 year, $37,500. We spend $10,000 in 1 year on a middle school student for their education. Is there something wrong in this picture, or am I just smoking too much?
No, that's the same thing. I mean, we talk about it here in California as we spend over $60,000 a year in California to incarcerate one inmate. And here, that's a USC education, which includes housing. And so we need to stop backloading the system and start front-loading it.
Well, we need to start wrapping it up, too, because we are down to the last minute of our big broadcast. Gives us a chance to give us a shout-out to our favorite URLs. I can certainly tell you the white community has been impacted by the war on drugs. I'm a white male, and I can tell you that every time I've walked down the street smoking a joint in a black community, it's been horrifying watching those black people be arrested.
Absolutely. And so
did anybody get that? Did anybody get that?
No.
I'll do it again. While I'm walking down the street smoking a joint, it's horrifying to watch those black people get arrested for smoking pot.
So, Casper, you're suggesting that you were not noticed because you were white?
Oh, I think they were just busy arresting other people, that's all.
Rapists and burglars, right?
No, the other pot smokers that were black and Hispanic.
Absolutely, and you're right. And you know, in California, we just had the ACLU Blue Ribbon Commission report that came out on what legalization may look like in California in the future. And one of the things that they were most critical about was the disparate effect of law enforcement in the role of marijuana, in particular, on the African American and the Hispanic communities. So I think that by ending the drug war will do a lot to rectify so many of the civil and social justice issues that we have been involved in the last 40 years.
Absolutely. So time for a shout out to your favorite URLs, and then we'll say happy Wednesday.
www.leap.cc, and thank you two very much for having me on.
And Your Honor?
I'm going to put in a plug for mycanaryapp.com. My Canary is an iPhone app. It's on iTunes, and it is designed to help a person look at their own performance. We don't care about chemistry. If your reaction time is slow, who cares what caused that? You're not going to run your table saw or get into your car. So that's where an awful lot of my time and energy is going. The day of our first blast out, the 500 copies we tried to give away turned into 2,000 that we gave away. Couldn't have been happier. People frequently, many of us, want to be responsible. We need the tools and not the crap.
And I want to remind people that we are no longer just a 1-hour broadcast, but we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, letting the whole world know how important it is to end prohibition. And remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for him.